All right, welcome back to the Havoc Roundtable podcast, episode 3. This time I have 5 special guests with me. First guest we have is Voodoo. What's up, Voodoo?
Everyone, thanks for having me on, Jedith. Doing good.
Awesome. Rev, how's it going? First time here?
Yep, thanks for having me on.
Of course. Shad, nice to see you again.
Hey.
And Atrayen, or his guild likes to call him A-Train. What's up?
What's up? Thanks for having me.
And of course, I am your host, Jedith, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. Havoc got a slew of changes. Some may call it a rework, some may not, but we're definitely in a very different position than we were previously. So yeah, how are you guys enjoying the new raid? We've had a few days in there. First week is almost done. Does anyone have any thoughts on the raid?
Duck boss sucks.
Amen. I was gonna say I'm loving it, except for the council boss. It's just it feels like it never goes well, and it's just so chaotic. But everything else is pretty great so far.
I've been enjoying pretty much the whole thing. It feels like movement isn't really limited in this raid other than Naimu, but other than that, it's pretty good.
I think the last 3 bosses are probably my favorite.
The last 2?
Three.
3.
Last 3.
So that would be
Smolderon,
Tendril, and
Fyrakk.
Fyrakk.
Yeah,
Those 3 are bangers. Those
For
3
sure.
are such good fights.
they're all kind of unique in their own way, right? Like Smolderon is a pretty tight damage check. It's like it's the one that the Liquid probably just recently killed, right?
Yeah, they killed it yesterday.
Finally got their kill on it.
They killed it with 1 tank left alive in deep
Oh my
enrage.
god. Damn, it's like the Anduin all over again.
It's the same tank too.
Scott.
Yeah.
And then we have Tindril, that's the dragon flying boss. I know a lot of people were skeptical about that type of mechanic in a mythic raid boss. But what do you guys think about it?
I didn't make it to mythic testing, but like the heroic part is super fine. It's like short, sweet. It's not to make or break portion of the fight. From what I've seen, flying up and hitting the orbs doesn't seem like it seems good. You use it to break the roots. So I think surprisingly they were worked out pretty well for them putting dragon riding into a raid boss.
The fight seems to just have a very good flow, and that's the most important part when you're trying to design a gimmick boss. If the flow feels unnatural in such a way that the gimmick feels forced, the boss is going to suffer, but I don't feel like they made that mistake here.
I agree. The fight just flows pretty quickly. I don't know. It's basically like a cycle of doing things on the boss.
Can we think of a previous raid boss where a gimmick like that didn't work out? Maybe
Not so much
something
on
like
the spot.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe something like I don't know, Fate Scribe. I feel like that was kind of a shit show of a boss.
I was an
Scribe
AOTC
definitely-
Andy then, but yeah, that on heroic with my AOTC guild back then, that was not. It just didn't hit. I don't know, but if mythic was different again, I wasn't. But that was not good.
I guess the obligatory shout out to the underwater boss, Blackwater Behemoth, back in
yeah.
Eternal Palace. That gimmick sucked.
Yeah,
But
that one was bad.
I can't think of any other egregious gimmick bosses that they've designed lately.
For sure, and I think that's a good thing. Can you guys think of any sort of shining moments for Havoc that you've encountered so far in the raid?
I mean, there's just a lot of cleave that we're really, really good at. That seems to line up pretty well with our timings. I mean, obviously, you have Immolation Aura up almost all the time, but you can even do like Fel Barrage shenanigans on like roots if you really want to go that way. There's just like a ton of really good cleave that seems to really fit Havoc's profile, which Avarice kind of didn't have. That just, I don't know, I like playing the raid, I felt like pretty good on almost every boss.
Agira felt really good. My guild killed it on Mythic on Thursday. Being able to play Fel Barrage on it and having my Fel Barrage essentially guarantee that at least 1 wave of spears every minute and a half was completely taken care of.
Right.
Felt very empowering.
I'm assuming everyone here has had a chance to do Fyrakk normal.
Yeah, I killed it on normal and heroic last week.
Kill him. Yeah. And normal
Yep.
and heroic.
What do you guys think of that fight? I really like it because I feel like all of the mechanics are super telegraphed. The fight arena is really like just visually clear.
Prior to the buffs it received, it was probably a little bit too easy, but I definitely enjoyed the fight. I'm very curious to see what it's going to play out like on Mythic, especially given that it is the same boss designer as Painsmith and Halandris, and I guess to some degree Sludgefist. Sludgefist is not one that I particularly remember fondly, but the other two were very good.
I think visually it's really cool as well. Like getting to Heroic that first time and having those spread lines coming out from you. I think visually it looked really cool, and I felt like it flows pretty well. I haven't done it post buff. We killed it before the buffs came out, but I mean, I think everything worked pretty cohesively. It's my favorite end boss so far from Dragonflight. I mean, obviously we probably won't have another one, but I think out of Raz, Sark, and this one, I've definitely been enjoying the Fyrakk so far. But Mythic will be something with the seeds in the end, I imagine. Yeah,
I feel like it was definitely undertuned. My guild went in there on normal and just one-shot it, which is pretty, it's to be expected, but still, without really knowing any of the mechanics, we just went in there and blasted it. And then a lot of guilds were killing it on Heroic pre-buff, right? And then they went in and buffed it. Does anyone know offhand what the buffs were?
They buffed damage numbers. If Shad knows it specifically, I'll let him talk, because I don't know off the top of my head specifically.
It's once you enter P2, the raid fight ticking damage, that got buffed pretty heavily. The line mechanic that comes in Heroic, they buffed that by like 40%. Pretty significant as well. It starts hitting for like 400k, and the people that have that mechanic are guaranteed to get it, even if no one else makes mistakes. There was also just in P3, the floating fire tornadoes do a lot more if you mess up and get hit by them, but they're heavily avoidable, and really you can even avoid placing them where you're going to be playing, so that didn't matter too much. All around, the buffs just really upped the healing requirement and make you get punished a lot more. Our guild actually killed it post-buff, and it still wasn't that bad. It was just had a 6 heal in 26 man, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I saw like, I think when we were progging on Smolderon on Heroic, we had a lot of players in there, and we were looking at some of the other guilds that were progging with 30 people in Heroic, and they had like 7-8 healers. It's a pretty healing intensive fight. A lot of these fights seem pretty healing intensive, and even a lot of them have healing specific mechanics. Like on, Fyrakk, you have to heal the spirits that are coming out. On Laradar, you have to like heal the stuff in the middle or whatever it is. Like there's a lot of unique mechanics that are specific to each different role in the raid. I think that's really cool.
It's like Laradar and Fyrakk, because in my memory, the last healer fight we had was Sun King, I think. I don't know if there's one since then, but it comes to mind where it was like everybody else basically did nothing, and the healers were like the main thing. But I think they did a good job of kind of balancing it where everything's kind of equally important this time.
Now that you mention it, there seems to be a lot of emphasis on healer like mechanics this tier. I feel like almost every fight has like something for the healers that that's like either like concerning or raid wiping.
I think it's a good thing, because healers, they are usually pretty stressed in terms of like, if their main job is to just like make sure bars don't go down, to 0%, that means that the mechanics are all based around doing damage to the rest of the raid. Whereas in this sense, it's more like, okay, you have to do this other type of thing as well as keep up the bars, the health bars, but there's less emphasis on the health bars, I'm not a healer myself, so I'm kind of just talking out of my ass right now, but from an outside perspective, that seems like it's a good thing. We're going to move on from talking about specific bosses. Let's talk about how Havoc has been performing in the raid so far. I think the biggest talking point is the change in playstyle. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Where do we want to start with that? Do we want to talk about movement versus non-movement?
I think I'd like to talk about how there's so much more downtime now on the spec.
Yeah, sure.
For starters, it just you're forced into more downtime in any build you play in, and I feel like that's been the most noticeable thing for me. Movement aside, basically.
So let's talk about why that downtime was bad before.
I mean, the main thing on previous builds was with Cycle of Hatred, any GCD you're missing, you're just missing out on I-Beam reduction, and with Shattered Destiny, missing out on globals is you're reducing demonic uptime, and both of those work off demonic uptime. So as you miss globals or you have any downtime, your damage just goes through the floor, and with us not playing those builds, or even if you do play those builds now, having downtime and having it be balanced around that downtime just kind of makes it a lot smoother to play, where you have room to make mistakes and not just do no damage.
The other thing to factor in is just how flooded with resources we were the past 2 tiers. Isolated Prey made it so that you basically never pressed Fellblade, you almost never pressed Sigil of Flame, you were basically spamming Chaos Strike and Annihilation and Death Sweep and Blade Dance and I-Beam, and you weren't having to worry too much about your resources. So the overall reduction in your resource generation is a very healthy change for Havoc, and it has made it so that even when you are playing the Cycle and Shattered Destiny build, it's not like you're constantly having buttons to press. You feel less crippled when you have downtime, which is a very important thing, especially as you get targeted for raid mechanics.
Them buffing Fellblade and Sigil of Flame too, like they actually kind of feel like buttons I want to press now, right? But before it was like, if I push this, I've messed up somehow down the line. I just lost like thousands of DPS. I know all of us are probably really enjoying the downtime and stuff, but I have actually seen like a ton of comments from people who maybe aren't as entrenched in Havoc, who are like, what is all this downtime? What is this downtime? But I really don't think the downtime is a bad thing, like Atrayen and Jad were saying. I think it was a problem before with all the resources we had. It's just like the toxic cycle of hatred and Shattered Destiny. So I think it really is a lot better now that we have that downtime. It's less punishing on every GCD you do. If you get forced off the boss, you feel it less, and I've been vibing a lot more, I guess I could say.
I think it adds different kinds of skill cap too. It's like a lot of people complain saying, there's more downtime in it and it just makes the spec easier. But the other side that just isn't usually mentioned is that your Fury economy actually matters now. You need to actually plan ahead. If you just throw Chaos Strike because you have 40 Fury and then you don't have, Fury to press Blade Dance, you messed up and you get punished for that still. And that's something that people just kind of ignore and say that it got dumbed down a bit.
Yeah, I feel like the people who might have issue with the downtime this time around, they might feel that because maybe they're not doing their burst windows properly, so they're not feeling the impact of actually setting things up properly. Just like Shad said, like, if you're not playing, I guess, in the right way, then when you do get that downtime, you're just like, okay, this feels bad because I didn't do damage before and now I have nothing to press now. But I find, like, if you're setting up your inertia windows properly, aligning it with initiative, you're getting that essence break in there, it feels really good. Like, essence break felt good before, but it feels even better now. Because as soon as you get that big death sweep with all those buffs on it, you see it on the meters right away. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it personally. How do you guys feel about the change to momentum and movement and having to play, or having the option to play inertia now instead of momentum?
Not just inertia, right? It's just the ability to opt out of movement in general. So over the course of Dragonflight, a lot of optimization has been done to our APL so that the momentum and movement-based builds in general would perform as close to a perfect scenario as possible. And that just wasn't entirely true before. It was close, but it didn't quite meet the standard of what would be acceptable as far as APLs go. But the thing to keep in mind, momentum has been better at least twice in the past. Once during Uldir and once during Sanctum of Domination, right? It simmed better in theory than the demonic easier builds, but people still opted into the demonic builds and did damage just fine. And I think that now that the APL is optimized for our movement-based damage, the fact that movement-based talent builds are only give or take 3.5 to 4% ahead of non-movement based builds, it offers a significantly healthier variety of talents for every Havoc player to enjoy, right? So you have the people at the very top end, your Evade, Shakib, Nice Memes, and they're able to opt into, if the fight calls for it, a non-movement based talent profile that allows them to keep up with the rest of their raid and not feel like they're losing out on infinite damage when their damage windows are much tighter than the average raider in the community right now.
100%. everything is just so close now. Even the choice between inertia and momentum, like on paper, they're not that different. Obviously, AFI kind of pushes that ahead a little bit for inertia, but like just that choice node is pretty closely tuned. And because IP was changed, Isolated Prey, you have that choice to opt out now, right? Because beforehand, if you were doing a no mover build, you still had to move to play optimally because of the Fury generation it gave. But if Jimmy, dad of 4, wants to come home and just relax, play Havoc, not worry about moving after a hard day at work, he can do that now and not, not feel like he's losing all the damage. Like Atrayen said, it has impacts on the higher end, but also towards the lower end, the mid end. It's just all these builds being so close together is really, really good now. And I actually applaud Reels for somehow getting it so close to each other, at least from what we've seen, where everything is just really, really close and tightly tuned together.
Have you guys had any opportunities to maybe swap into a no mover build in your raid fights this week?
Not yet, but for Mythic Naimu, I'm pretty sure most people will end up playing it there. It looked like that's what Race World first people were playing.
Yeah, I don't think.
too.
Yeah, I don't think you can do mover on Mythic Naimu. It seemed too like dance-like and too much going on. But you can play low mover. I played before I got tier set on a lot of single target fights, and it felt pretty good, honestly.
I swapped into no mover for Naimu. I think I may have tried it on Smolderon at the start because I was having trouble dodging the tornadoes, but eventually I swapped to inertia. But it's definitely nice to feel that there isn't that much of a difference if you are going to swap, even if it is just to kind of learn the mechanics and get your grounding during a fight. And then once you become comfortable, you could swap to movement if you want. I feel like having that option to do that without having a major loss in damage is a godsend. Like you said, Voodoo, props to Reels and whoever else is on the team that's working on Havoc. I think there's been some great communication between the community and the devs, and they've been listening pretty well. So yeah, definitely props to them. I think Atrayen, you mentioned that there has been optimization to the APL over the course of this expansion. There's a bunch of you guys working on it. Can somebody give us an understanding of what the APL was before and how it was kind of off, or what was different about it back then?
It was largely written from the perspective of somebody that was playing demonic. It was not written from the perspective of somebody that would be playing momentum. So it didn't optimize for, back in Sanctum of Domination, it didn't necessarily perfectly optimize for when you were in your Essence Break window. Back then, Essence Break was 40%, I think, for 8 seconds. So you would try to line it up with your demonic, your I-beam, so that you could maximize your Furious Gaze and get your maximum damage from those windows. But even with the APL not really written from the perspective of somebody that played momentum, it would still allow momentum to sim ahead by as much as 2 to 3% in those cases, and people could still opt out of it. So realistically, with all the optimization that's been done, having 4% when you're considering that it's a robot in a patchwork scenario where the boss is not moving and it's not giving you mechanics that you have to work around, and it's not making the arena insane to play around, the fact that it's only 4% ahead is pretty significant.
Right. And even just boss mechanics alone are kind of a variable that's out of our hands. Whereas even a player's performance, if they're not playing momentum as well as the sims are, the difference is going to be even more minimal, because they're going to play better with a no mover build. I think there's a lot of people who feel like they need to be playing movement because that's what everyone's telling them to do, and they're feeling that pressure from the community. But they'd be much better off just playing no mover. They'd be so much closer to what their sims are showing them if they just did what they felt comfortable doing. I feel like that pressure is really only relevant to the top end people who are, again, in Race to World first, or who are trying to get somewhere on a certain timeline within a time limit. Then yeah, you want to make sure your DPS is the best that it can be all the time. But if you're just, like Voodoo said, if you're a dad coming home at the end of the night, just want to slam some raids with your buddies, play no mover. Play whatever is most comfortable to you. Have you guys had any opportunity to play Mythic Plus this week? If so, what are your thoughts? What builds were you playing?
So the builds I have up on WoW had the Ignition one with Fel Barrage over Essence Break. Just been playing that the whole time. In general, this dungeon pool is just so much better than the last one for melee.
I agree.
Way better for playing movement in. There's a couple scenarios that suck, and that's about it out of all the dungeons. Really good. Really big over last season.
I tried forcing Essence Break when I started off, but then I saw Shad was posting meters with Fel Barrage on it that were just insane, and so I finally caved in, tried Fel Barrage. I realized it's not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's actually a lot of fun once you get used to it.
You can be really dynamic in how you play it, which is just interesting.
Yeah, I've been the other way. I started with Fel Barrage, and I was like, oh, I'm not doing this right. I'm gonna go back to Essence Break, and I've been getting great results with it. But if you guys are getting like crazy numbers with Fel Barrage, maybe I need to take another look at it.
Well, I am curious.
353k in a Throne of Tides last night before I went to bed.
Ogged or no?
50.
No Ogg.
No Ogg.
And competing with another DH because Yoda was in there too.
I am curious, Jedith. Do you have your 2-piece yet or no?
I have my 4-piece, so.
Oh,
yeah.
All right. Yeah, you're blessed.
I just need a Catalyst Beast. I think I moved last week, so I haven't had a ton of time to do dungeons. I think I don't even have my full vault yet. I'm gonna do them tomorrow. But I think the fact that people were playing Fel Barrage, people were playing Essence Break, and still doing well. I think again, just really good. You have the choice there to pick and tailor. Maybe you need more boss damage. Maybe you need more priority damage. Maybe there's just not that many big pulls, and you can just swap Fel Barrage, Essence Break, and still do well. I think is great. Also, there's Glaive Tempest, but I mean, still fine. But dungeons really fun from what I've done so far, from what I've seen. Much better. No Vortex Pinnacle.
I think I'm the only Demon Hunter who's been swapping. I feel like I've been the only Demon Hunter who's been actively swapping builds. I keep swapping between Essence Break and Fel Barrage in a lot of the keys because I feel like for some of these keys, Fel Barrage just doesn't really seem ideal, and I just want Essence Break. But also, in addition, I should show you guys some of the overalls, the breakdowns I've been getting with my 4-piece. I did a key last night where my hunt was my top damage, and it beat everything in the key.
Yeah, the hunt has been surprisingly slamming with the 4-piece, way more than I thought it would.
I do see, of the dungeon pool this season, I think Rise is definitely the most difficult, at least of the ones that I've done on 20s so far. I can't speak to Throne of the Tides. I have a 19 timed. I haven't done a 20 of that yet.
I think Throne can be worse than an uncoordinated group because of the last boss, but I think otherwise those two are probably the harder two.
I know at least on sub creation now that Rise drop below Throne once people learn Throne. That's one of my favorite keys. I think Havoc is actually just absolutely nuts in there. The pull cadence just fits everything perfect. But it's definitely one of the harder two, at least statistically.
Yeah, there's a few mobs in Throne of the Tides that are giving people a lot of trouble. The Snapdragons are destroying people.
That pack of like 7 Snapdragons.
Yeah.
That last hallway is obliterating people.
Yeah.
Once you learn to pull back out of it with the swells, like that one gets a lot easier. But if you have a group that's not doing that, you're just gonna chain wipe in there. And I think that's where like a lot of it is why it started out that Rise was easier, but once people learn Throne, it's not being so bad.
Rise is particularly hard too. The trash before the first boss, I think, is just extremely deadly.
Every dragon. Every dragon.
Every dragon in there.
The timer feels wrong in there too. It's just
the
too
timer
short.
feels so wrong.
Yeah. What do you guys think is going to happen next week for Tyrann? How's that going to go?
You're going to see a lot of people getting one-shot by Mythic Xavius and Darkheart. That Nightmare
You
Bolt.
won't get to Xavius. The tree's gonna stomp you out.
True.
Yeah, the tree hurts way more.
If you manage to get to Xavius, I should say, you're going to see Feed on the Weak, I think is the ability. The Channel Drain from Xavius, that's going to take people out back. You're going to see Nightmare Bolt take people out back.
We did 22 last night. Nightmare Bolt did 800k.
Damn.
Just, you can't do anything about it. So
Yeah.
on Tyrann, that's great.
It didn't occur to me that this week is Fortified Week, and seeing some of the boss damage coming in from some of these abilities, quite nuts.
It's been rough. Like, we've been using Lust on bosses because it's crazy.
The boss I'm actually most worried about, this kind of depends on the comp you play, is actually Waycrest Tree Boss. the buff that they did to that thorns that it puts out just makes no sense. It does way too much damage now.
Yeah. The hard part used to be when you lit the tree on fire. That's when all the damage went out. But now the thorns are just destroying people.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it is also trying to factor in the immense stamina increase that you're going to see a lot of people have this tier, because the item level gap between Mythic of last tier and normal of this tier is actually fairly substantial this time around. They bumped everything up a tier, so I wonder if Blizzard decided that because stamina is going to be much higher, they felt obligated to make some of these mechanics truck early on.
I think we'll see a lot of nerfs. It seems like a lot of it was just overdone as is.
Yeah, like they overcompensated.
Even with the higher eye level, I think we were seeing like 800, 900 KHP at max. Like that Xavier's bolt's still gonna almost one-shot you, even if you're at the higher eye level. Like that's just overtuned.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see what happens next week. I think it was kind of the same situation last tier too, or last season. Keys were super hard at the start, and they had to nerf a bunch of them. So I'm hoping they take the same approach. But yeah,
I couldn't tell you. My last season journey started with Vortex Pinnacle, where the first boss took me out back, and then my next key was good old Neltharian's Lair, and Rockmora took me out back. So I didn't play keys much last season because I was not having a good time.
Yeah, last season was rough.
Yeah, I know a lot of people didn't like last season. So now that we know that a Fated season is confirmed, how do you guys think they're going to approach the dungeon pool for that? Are we going to get all Dragonflight dungeons, or what do you guys think?
I think it'd be weird if we don't see Dragonflight dungeons again, considering we've only seen them once this entire expansion. Now, if that's a good thing or not, I think there's some really good Dragonflight dungeons and really bad Dragonflight dungeons, but I think it'd be weird if we go through the whole expansion and just see them once in the rotation.
Basically, they seem to okay, so they have this stance where they want to, like, they don't want people to basically remember how to do dungeons, and that's why they started changing the dungeons every season, because they didn't want people to just adopt the same strats from the previous season. And so that's why I feel like they'll introduce a fresh, different dungeon pool.
I don't personally agree. I think they're going to pull back some of the fan favorites like Algathar from this expansion, and then just, you know, continue going back and grabbing some random dungeons that might not fit thematically into future seasons, just to get them out of the way, because they haven't done any repeats yet on previous expansion pulls, and they are running out of dungeons before they have to start looping back and redoing some. So I think they'll pull ones that aren't going to fit into the next expansion, because they do try to pull thematically when they're taking these old dungeons back.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's only so many dungeons because they're not going past Cataclysm, right? They're not doing Wrath or before, so there's only so many dungeons they can have before they run out and start to redo. Maybe not all Dragonflight dungeons, like Shad was saying, but probably some of the favorite ones. Like, I could see Algathar coming back pretty certainly if they're doing a Fated season, but they could also just innovate and do something completely different than last Fated season. Like, we don't really know.
Yeah, I know all Demon Hunters are just drooling at the thought of doing the tree boss in Algathar with the new setup. The timings are too good. We'll have Fel Barrage for every burst phase.
Second that, I think.
Yeah, it's gonna be juicy. What other Dragonflight dungeons would you guys like to see?
Ruby.
Yeah, I was gonna say Ruby.
Yep.
I think Ruby and Algathar are probably top two for me.
I'm trying to think what else there was that was good. I mean, they're all good in their own way.
Vault. I really like Vault, but Vault was not the favorite for a lot of people, I think.
Vault.
Azure Vaults, yeah.
Vault was mechanically challenging for pugs, I think. But if you were able to get in there and like execute the mechanics properly, you got all the kicks that you needed. It was pretty fun. I would agree.
The routing ended up being a bit cheesy in there too, which always just made it feel off. Going and hopping off the rings to get around was kind of not it.
Those are the kind of things that are like, at least to me, that's like fun the first few times you do it, and then it's just like, how did they not see this? And then it's just like you feel super cheesy. Like once or twice, you're like, oh, that's really cool, and then it's like this just kind of feels empty a little bit.
Is there anything else that was like outstandingly good for dungeons? I can't even think of what they were.
Alone, or
yeah, Dragonflight.
Yeah, Dragonflight.
Some people might make an argument for No-Coup Defensive, but I personally don't particularly care to see that dungeon come back.
I don't think any of the Dragonflight dungeons have anything like remarkable. Like people remember Freehold from BFA, or like Underrod, or like from Legion. They remember, I don't know, what, Horde, I guess.
Ma.
And Ma, yeah. Like, I don't think Dragonflight has had one of those dungeons. The closest I can think is maybe Ruby. And
I think Ruby-
Academy. And
Yeah,
Ruby, are probably
Ruby
the
or
closest.
Algathar would be the two. But other than that, they're just kind of mid or kind of bad. I don't know.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, knowing what next expansion's theme leads into. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we might see Seat of the Triumvirate as one of the Mythic Plus dungeons for the Fated season. I'm
That's
not
actually a good
wishing that.
point.
I'm not wishing that evil on anyone, obviously, but I could see it.
I will
We
would-
might
note,
get
yeah.
thematic dungeons.
It would make sense.
I think how a dungeon was when it was last played and how it is once it comes back in and gets retuned is also entirely different. Like, Freehold is probably the best example, where they took a dungeon that everyone loved and slapped on a bunch of horrible mechanics to a bunch of mobs so that you couldn't do what you liked in there, and it just wasn't as good. So
Yeah,
what
they
they do
ruined
to an old
Freehold.
dungeon, we just don't know what's exactly going to happen.
Yeah, maybe they fix Seat of the Triumvirate and it's not the worst dungeon on the planet.
I
So
didn't play in Legion. How bad was Seed?
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't do High Mythic Plus back then, but I remember that dungeon being bad because there was a lot of just random trash.
Yeah, so it set the precedent for new dungeons typically being god-awful. So the previous season you had Cathedral of Eternal Night, which came out and was basically undoable on the same level as every other dungeon because every boss in there was overtuned. Because Cathedral is when they started, air quotes, designing dungeons with Mythic Plus in mind, right? So Seat came out, and it was almost undoable by a vast majority of the player base. There were people, obviously, that pushed very high levels of it, that played it very well, but it required a level of coordination that most groups just could not pull off until it got nerfed a couple times. I don't remember the extent of the nerfs, because by then I didn't play Mythic Plus at a high enough level to know where those nerfs would lie, and I also played Tank back then, but I do remember Seat Week 1 Mythic Plus just being an absolute catastrophe. Like, you got a Seat key, it was dead.
Yeah, man, now that you say that, I'm pretty sure that would be one of the returning dungeons. It just makes too much sense. So, we'll see what they do.
Well, they've had a
Um,
few years and a few attempts at reaching
yeah.
the dungeon, so hopefully it's not as bad, but we'll see.
Yeah,
I do expect Fated might have one or two tie-ins to War Within, just because of how it's going to work out.
I have a graphic pulled up on the screen right now. You guys can't see it, but it's sub-creation. I've been kind of going between the Raid and the Mythic Plus screens, and Havoc is displaying as S tier for both. Do you guys think that we have nerfs ahead of us? Obviously, if they are to happen, it's probably going to be after the race. But what do you guys think?
The childish, petty part of me says that other classes got to be broken for a very long time. See Shadowlands Seasons 3 and 4 for Destruction Warlock and Season 4 of Battle for Azeroth for Fire Mage. The adult part of me is saying, yes, we're probably going to get nerfs. But there's a caveat to that. I don't think they're going to be too bad, because Havoc has a pretty powerful power spike with 2-piece that a lot of classes don't have yet. But if you think back to the Mythic Dungeon competition that was played at BlizzCon, you saw a Fire Mage and a Frost Mage keeping up with the Havoc Demon Hunter on... I don't even know if they called themselves Ambition during the Mythic Dungeon competition they had, but Ambition's comp, right? You had Azunas keeping up with their Havoc just fine on 2 specs. I think BM is going to be very strong, especially after the buffs to them, where they're now going to scale with attack power for their pets off of weapon damage. I think that Rogue is flying a little bit under the radar for Mythic Plus. I mean, it's clearly a highlight in Raid right now. I think Enhancement Shaman is also very strong. So while I think Havoc might receive some nerfs, I don't think it's going to receive extreme nerfs.
To add on to that, I've been playing like a lot of M+, and I haven't played with a lot of specs, specifically a lot of good people on specs that I think would be pretty good. But the ones I have played with, I could say Assassination Rogue is absolutely insane too. Frost Mage, absolutely insane as well. Like, just getting matched or getting beaten in burst when I do all my setup proper. I also think it's worth noting, Havoc looks a lot better in a key where it gets to steal all the damage, and in these keys where everyone's just running farm keys and they're lower, you are killing packs before other people get to do their AoE that has more setup, because we can get our damage out so quickly right now. When the key levels go higher, our damage won't jump as much as other classes will that are already pretty competitive. I do think, though, they're probably going to have to slap on like a 15 or 20% MOR nerf, which will nerf Ragefire too. That would bring us down pretty considerably, like 5% in AoE, and that would put us in line with a lot of other specs unless they want to start nerfing other ones too. And then in Raid, I don't think our performance is actually anywhere near as good as some of the other specs. We just have like really disgustingly good AoE, and our single target does not hold up quite the same.
Yeah, our single target's kind of average. It's not really. It's just our cleave that's kind of the thing. But if they do end up nerfing Immolation Aura by that much, just for AoE, then I think we would have to have some kind of compensating single target nerf to like Chaos Strike or Primary Throw-Glaive damage or something.
Yeah. So general consensus is we don't think we're going to get nerfed to the ground, but if we are to get something, probably just a little touch up to our AoE, bring it down in line with everything else, and if anything, maybe a little buff to our single target.
Yeah. My biggest concern is that if they do nerf us, they end up only nerfing the non-cycle build to the point where the cycle build starts to pull ahead again. I'd prefer
not again.
to not go back to that playstyle, but you know.
Yeah, that's why I think Throw-Glaive might offset it, because the CD builds get a little bit more out of Throw-Glaive than the cycle builds do, but I don't know. Yeah, it's a little concerning if they nerf just Immolation Aura, then we might... Cycle might catch up more.
And that's because we're getting more death sweeps, right? That are taking advantage of the two-piece?
For the most part, it's just... The build's already really similar. There's the momentum build to play Shattered Destiny and Cycle, and the upside is that you spend so much more time in Demonic, even though the uptime is massively nerfed from last year. It's still way higher. You don't have that much Demonic uptime in our current raid build. And if you nerf Immo Aura, that build runs all the Immo Aura talents. It has Burning Wound. It does a decent amount of single target Immolation Aura damage, and then you're running a Fire Inside for the extra procs because it gives you more inertias. As soon as you play Momentum, you don't take any of that. So if you nerf Immo Aura 20%, you directly nerf the build we're playing, and you don't nerf the other build almost at all.
I could actually
it's gonna pull ahead.
On that note, I could actually see them buffing the damage amp that Burning Wound gives Immo Aura to counteract the AoE nerf that they would be giving it, so that it doesn't hurt the single target as much, but make sure that the AoE is pulled in line a little bit.
I think the problem is our 3 target's also insane, and Burning Wound is 3 target too.
I think they okay, so this is like a little copium theory, but on when I was doing like a lot of keys last night, a lot of keys on PTR. I genuinely think that they might be aware that we don't like there are specs that are able to match us and everything when content gets more difficult. I think maybe they're waiting on that. I don't know. I would hope that they're waiting on that. I feel like a nerf right now might be with incomplete data. I think it's more beneficial to see when keys actually start capping out than. But I don't think that's how nerfs work though.
Yeah, I mean, it would also kind of make sense that if they were more cautious about it, because I mean, if you remember, before Season 1 of Dragonflight even began, the problem that Shad was highlighting, where we were essentially stealing all the damage because all of our damage was front-loaded, it made Havoc look absolutely disgusting on every meter that was posted, and we're kind of back to that point right now. Things aren't living long enough for other classes to really get much significant damage off. And, you know, I would hope that perhaps a lesson has been learned from that, because after Havoc was nerfed and everything else was buffed, it kind of fell off. But who knows? New management company, new Blizzard. Let's see if Microsoft changes anything.
I do feel the need to point out, though, no cope, Havoc's overtuned in M+. Like, there's no way to go about it. Our Shadow Priest swapped, and bought all the Auctioneer's gear on the DH, did the same damage in a key as a Shadow Priest.
Shadow
And he
Priest is
hadn't-
also
Yeah, but Shadow
rough.
Priest is bad.
Oh,
right
it's
now,
rough.
too.
He also was only 20k behind our mage while down 50 item level with no tier set. So maybe it's just a little too high. And honestly, with where most of the damage comes from right now, just being from Immolation Aura, it's also not hard to do AoE on Havoc either. There's
Yeah.
not much nuance to it.
I've had some
That's fair,
comments on my videos of people being like, I literally have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just slamming buttons and I'm topping meters. So it's definitely very easy to do damage right now. And if you can do things properly, you do even more damage. So I would agree. I think it is a little overtuned. I just don't want to see us get hammered again.
I don't think that'll happen. I think if we get nerfed, it'll be, hopefully anyways, this might be cope, that'll be reasonable, but I do agree that we need something, but I don't think we need as much as a lot of people think we do, because we are stealing a lot of damage right now because we're so front loaded.
Yeah, and even like in my raid situation, my raid team, I have to keep reminding myself that I'm probably so high on the meters right now because I have my 4-piece and a lot of my guild doesn't. I got an eye level that was a lot higher than the rest of my guild, a lot quicker. Where are you guys right now in your prog? Where's everyone at?
I full cleared Heroic, and then we start Mythic on Sunday.
We
1 out
full
of 9
cleared.
in Mythic.
We full cleared Heroic, and we're 2 out of 9 Mythic. We should be 3 out of 9 by the end of Sunday, working on Council of Dreams. I am not looking forward to that fight.
We're done raiding for the week. I'm in a 2-day guild. We did 3 days this week. We're 1 out of 9 Mythic, and then our eye level's like 455 average. We just got hard geared wall to Nagara. We just couldn't live everything.
I mean, that's pretty good for a 2-day-a-week guild. You guys full cleared Heroic and your...
We did 3 this week. But
Yeah.
we're normally 2. But yeah, we're full clear Heroic, 1-9 Mythic, and then I think we got Nagara on like 30%, and we just couldn't end up living it with our low eye level.
Did you say you guys were 455?
Yeah, that's our average.
That's insanely low.
Yeah,
Actually,
we don't do any splits or anything. We just game.
Well, I mean, neither does my guild, but we've been living inside Mythic Plus this week. I think our average item level should be above 460 something at this point. Hopefully, we're gonna walk in geared enough to slam the worm, and then Vanta's Council and work on that one.
we did
Yeah, our eye level's
just-
super low.
we did just one normal split, and then a regular Heroic clear, but we've done so much Mythic Plus. Like, I'm at 64 runs for the week, which is top of my guild, but not by much. We have 7 people over 50 runs. Our average item level, though, is like 464, and we have people as high as 470.
Unrelated side note, I sincerely hope Blizzard finds a way to kill splits next expansion, because the power of splits is now trickling down into like World 500 guilds, and it's disgusting.
Did you
My
see what
old-
Cam tweeted?
What? Who tweeted?
Limit Cam.
No,
One of his recommendations was removing the loot lockout on Heroic, so you could just spam
Saw
run it
this.
in the same group.
Yeah, but like splits have really trickled down. My old, I don't know what world rank we were. The guild I killed Sark with. We were not very highly ranked. They were doing splits this tier. Like, I think they're in like the 600s, 700s or something. So it's really trickled down the idea that you have to do it to do things. So I think something kind of needs to be done.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, if my guild were to do splits, I would hate that. I would absolutely hate it. Because, like, it's not what you're signing up for. You're not signing up to spend entire days, like, you know, gearing up different characters and funneling gear. Unless you're raised to world first, that's not, like, in your scope of expectations of what a raid team is doing. But, yeah, they have to do something
It's an
for it, for
arms
sure.
race, right? Like Blizzard tunes a raid, and then guilds do splits, and the raid falls over, and everyone says, "Oh, the raid was too easy." Then they make the raid harder, and then these guilds do more splits, and then the raid falls over, and it's a vicious cycle. And now you have guilds doing what, 15 to 20 splits in the first week.
I mean, but
Why?
worse too. Like Liquid and Echo and all of them are like 470 something average. Like they're 474 or something like that, which is a crazy number considering we started at 448, 446, something like that.
Fortunately, they did add a raid nerf in this tier because we have the quest that gives you the incandescent essence. But I think that's
Right.
week 6 that kicks in. So for any guild that's in like Hall of Fame range, you basically won't get that, assuming this is somewhat similar to last tier.
Well, that quest was bugged, right? They had to hotfix it because
They're fixing it, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
apparently the catch-up is it's just a 10, so you can get 10 of them a week, but that cap is additive. So if you don't get 10 the first week, then you get up to 20 the second week, and then up to 30 the third. So you don't fall behind if you don't miss
Right.
out, and bosses drop like 2 to 3 of them or whatever.
So we got 5 of them this week.
We should have gotten 10, according to that.
Should have gotten 10, but we got 5, yeah. And how many do you need? 50 total?
50.
50,
It should
yeah.
be week 5 then.
It's
Yeah.
week 5, yeah.
Interesting. And is
It's
that
like a 3% damage from what I saw on
Okay.
our sims. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was
don't know
gonna ask.
what it is for tanks or healers, but it roughly was like 3% for us, if I remember.
It's a pretty good free buff.
yeah, over the course of your entire raid, that's going to be a massive increase. Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of stuff. I guess just before we wrap up here, we can talk about something a little fun. With the War Within, they announced new hero talents. And of course, because Demon Hunter only has 2 specs, which I think we were all kind of hoping for a third one, because we only have 2 specs, we only get 2 kind of trees of hero talents, which are the Eldraki Reaver, I think that's how you say that, and Felscard. What are your guys' predictions on what those are, what they look like, what they might do?
Vengeance, I have no idea. I kind of wrote a half-baked script for this and then canned it because I just couldn't find enough. But Eldraki, we have some lore on. They're like this race of like warriors that fought against the Burning Legion, and then Felscard is like stuff that's been touched by the Burning Legion. So if I had to guess, I think we see one kind of lean into the demonic aspect of things, like more demon form stuff, Inhalation Aura stuff, like all like the Fel magic. And I think Eldrachi might be more along the lines of like kind of older momentum where we didn't have demonic form and like glaives or something like that, but there's really not a ton to pull off of there, so I don't know.
This is my cope request. I don't think that this is probably going to happen, but it's something that I can dream of. Our 2-piece bonus. I really hope that it gets repackaged in some way and thrown into one of the hero trees, because it's just such a huge quality of life.
I kind of hope Furious Rose is reworked into the tier set somehow, because Furious
would be
Rose
good
is pretty
too.
well disliked, and it is also hard required to do anything with Throw Glaive while it's a talent.
Yeah, so that talent is required because it essentially doubles the glaives you're throwing out, but it makes them cost fury, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
I could see that being in some kind of Eldrachi style of thing, because again, their whole thing is that they refuse like the stuff from the Burning Legion, so they're all like anti-demonic warriors. So I could see, because the glaive stuff is not really demon related, I guess I could see that happening. Now there is one other thing for Eldrachi. The only other like mention of it is that there's like this Void Revenant, so there might be some offshoot chance it's randomly Void related, but again, I don't know. There's not a ton of stuff out there for Demon Hunter.
I think Eldrachi Reaver is going to be more. It's going to be more tanky defensive type of like node, and then Felscard is going to be more DPS based, basically. I think the Eldrachi one might be like some sort of cross in with becoming more tanky and then doing damage in that way. Like, I guess doing damage, being more tanky, and then the Felscard might be like throwing away your tankiness for all damage or something like that. That's just my little, like, based off what we have, is not that much.
Yeah, but then I think that the choice is always going to be clear, right? You would probably never go into the defensive one as Havoc.
From
You
what
just
we've seen with the
always take
Boomy
damage.
one, the Boomy one's the only one we know of, really. They share one with Resto, and they share one with the Guardian, and they're both trees. Even the Guardian Boomy one and the Boomy Resto one are all just damage focused. They don't really, unless they didn't show stuff, but all the nodes are just DPS. And maybe the other ones are utility, and one's like healing, one's like defensive. But from what we can tell so far, is they're mostly just pure throughput.
I think this might depend on who's making the trees too, because like coming into this expansion, we saw that between different classes and different designers, the trees were not a cohesive unit at all. They had very different levels of how they were designed, and very different goals. And you had, class trees that had all these damage nodes and everything strewn throughout, and you just had to drop all your utility to take it. And then you had class trees with literally none. It's just your utility and healing. And I'm a little worried that when the hero talents come, it's going to depend who made them, and we're going to have ones where you're picking defensive or damage, and you're going to have ones where everything's just given in that single trees, and they're all the same.
Yeah.
So,
on that note, I will say, whatever small subset of designers worked on the Havoc and Vengeance updates for 10.2, I want them on our hero trees. They knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. Reels will be on it.
Yeah, I imagine Reels is there. I mean, I think with the talent trees, they've shown for the retouches or reworks or whatever you want to call them, that most of their philosophy is kind of like updated to give access to utility without sacrificing any, if all, DPS. So I'm hopeful that they've learned a lot from Dragonflight, but I don't want to believe in Blizzard too hard. We've been burned before, but I'm hopeful that there'll be some good stuff coming out of this.
Just on that note of, having to choose previously between, defensiveness or utility and damage, this week, being able to take Mortal Dance for Sanguine Week and not having to lose damage has felt incredibly good. Because that was something you had to take before, and you would be sacrificing a damage talent, whether it was Looks Can Kill or something else, and you could take Immortal Dance. But now it's like, you go into those two talents, Netherwalk and Mortal Dance, or Deflecting Dance, or whatever it's called, just go into those naturally. So not having to sacrifice anything for those has been really good.
Well, you do sacrifice defensive power, which I will say feels pretty bad if you're doing higher keys too. Some of the stuff feels relevant, but I'll also note that of every single Havoc Demon Hunter that I've played with, not a single one has run Mortal Dance, which I find really grief on Sanguine.
Yeah,
that seems like an immense mistake.
I bet you a lot of people don't know it's there. Like, if you just look at a talent tree that any of us have posted online, because I think most of the guide writers here, I guess Word Up isn't, but I mean, like, if you don't actually read the tree, you just see Deflecting Dance, and I bet you people don't even read Mortal Dance.
Probably.
Yeah. And there are some hidden little benefits of Mortal Dance.
No comment.
Yeah.
No comment.
We'll leave it at that. So, okay. I think we're good. Does anyone else have any other topics that you think we maybe glossed over? If not, then we'll wrap it up here.
I think that's about it.
Cool.
Yeah, I think we did pretty good.
All right. So, yeah, as we're letting you guys go here, I do want to say that if anyone watching hasn't joined the Felhammer Discord yet, or if you have joined it previously and you left, do consider coming back, because there have been a lot of changes over at the Felhammer Discord. A lot of things were cleaned up. It's under new management. A lot of us are mods over there, and we've been doing some cleanup work. So Atrayen just wrote up a whole new FAQ channel. All the information you could ever need is in that channel. Voodoo and I both have YouTube channels where we are trying to make guides and informational videos as often and as quickly as possible. Shad is writing the Wowhead Havoc guide. He's done a great job over there. So definitely go check out the Wowhead guide. Rev and Atrayen both stream on Twitch. So all of the links to everything I just mentioned will be down in the description of this video. So go check it out. And thank you guys for watching. And thank you to my 5 guests for showing up. It's been great talking to y'all. And I hope everyone has fun playing Havoc this year.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
There's only 4 of us, by the way.
Well, okay, I'm talking to myself too, I guess.
Yeah, you're your own guest. I get it.
I'm my own guest here. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.